Welcome. In this video, we're going to be talking about the sin of Jeroboam, which is a fascinating event in Israel's history. It is when King Jeroboam sets up a golden calf in his new kingdom. And what makes this story so fascinating, which is found in 1 Kings chapter 12, is that it is so similar to another story about a golden calf found in Exodus 32. The parallels between these stories are remarkable, so make sure you watch to the end to find out more about that. All right, before we dive into 1 Kings 12, let's get some background information. So in about 1000 BC, Israel has a united monarchy. So Saul is the first king to rule over the entire kingdom. We then have David, then Solomon, then things go pear-shaped with King Rehoboam. It's under his rule that the kingdom splits into two. We now have Israel in the north and Judah in the south. This period is known as the divided monarchy, in which Rehoboam is the king of the south, and the very first king of Israel is a man by the name of Jeroboam. Now, let's remember that the temple is in Judah, specifically in Jerusalem. And this worries Jeroboam in the north because he knows that his people are going to have to travel down into Judah to visit the temple regularly. And we hear about his anxiety in 1 Kings 12, in which he says, quote, "Then Jeroboam said to himself, 'Now the kingdom may well revert to the house of David. If this people continues to go up to offer sacrifices at the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, the heart of this people will turn again to their master, King Rehoboam of Judah. They will kill me and return to King Rehoboam of Judah.' So therefore, Jeroboam comes up with a plan." We continue to read, quote, "So the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold." So what Jeroboam decides to do now is to get 2 calves of gold and to set them up in his kingdom of Israel. So he puts one in Dan and one in Bethel. So now the people of Israel no longer have to go down to Judah to worship. They've got their own shrines now in Bethel and Dan for them to frequent. Now, the reason why this is so sinful is primarily because Jeroboam is borrowing the pagan imagery of the Canaanites. The bull, which is before you now, dates to about 1200 BC and was found in the north of Israel. And it is therefore proof that the Canaanites used this imagery of calves for their pagan worship. And this is what Jeroboam is borrowing. In addition to the golden calves, we continue to read in 1 Kings 12 that Jeroboam also made temples on high places and appointed priests from among all the people who were not of the Levites. So he's creating his own priesthood. We continue to read that, "And Jeroboam appointed a feast on the 15th day of the 8th month, like the feast that was in Judah, and he offered sacrifices on the altar," end quote. So as you can see here, Jeroboam is trying to create a new religion to rival that of Judah's. They have new priests, new temples, new holy days. And all of this is known as the sin of Jeroboam, the founding sin of the kingdom of Israel. And there are multiple paintings of the sin of Jeroboam, all of which have a golden calf in the background. And what you're also going to notice with many of these paintings is not only the golden calf, but you have these new non-Levite priests coming up to the altar as well, which is really fascinating. Now, my favorite image of this event is this one before us now. As you can see, you've got the golden calf in the background. And here you've got Jeroboam, and he's looking terrified. And he's terrified because of this man right here, the man who is praying. The Bible refers to this man as only a man of God from Judah. And the story of him is fascinating. So let's now read 1 Kings chapter 12 to learn more about this man. Quote, "A man of God came out of Judah by the word of the Lord to Bethel, while Jeroboam was standing by the altar to offer incense. He cried out against the altar by the word of the Lord and said, 'O altar, altar, thus says the Lord, a son shall be born to the house of David, Josiah by name.'" All right, let's just stop here, everyone. This is remarkable. Here, this man is predicting the coming king of Judah, King Josiah. And this is 300 years in the future. There are very few places in the Bible where we get a prediction by name of someone in the future. So this is really a remarkable thing. We continue to read. "And he, Josiah, shall sacrifice on you the priests of the high places who offer incense on you, and human bones shall be burnt on you." So here, it's really quite violent. We're being told that Josiah is going to kill the priests on the very high altars that they worship at. All right. This is really remarkable. The fact that we have a prediction of someone by name 300 years in the future. Richard Elliott Freeman says the following about this event. "The reference to Josiah by name in a story that takes place 300 years before he is born is remarkable, even in a book filled with prophecies and miracles. No other case of such explicit prediction of a person by name so far in advance occurs in biblical narrative, end quote. Of course, scholarship doesn't believe in prophecy, and thus they believe that the author of 1 Kings was written during the reign of King Josiah. This is similar to what occurs in the book of Isaiah, which mentions by name Cyrus 200 years in the future. And again, scholarship contends that this part of Isaiah must have been written by someone living during the reign of Cyrus. Again, that's a discussion for another day, but really fascinating to keep in mind. All right, we now are going to enter the second part of this video, and this is where things are going to get exciting. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to compare this story in 1 Kings 12 of Jeroboam's sin with a very similar story found in Exodus 32. And that is when Moses is up getting the 10 Commandments, and all of Israel are at the base of the mountain, and Aaron decides to make a golden calf, and this is when Moses comes down and destroys everything. So this is very similar to the story that we read in 1 Kings 12. These stories, the stories of Exodus 32 and 1 Kings 12, have a lot of parallels. And we're just going to spend some time now just comparing them because the parallels are truly remarkable. All right, the first parallel that I want to go through is what Aaron and Jeroboam say after they've set up their golden calves. So Aaron, after he sets up his golden calf, says, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." Jeroboam says, "Behold your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." They say almost the same thing. One scholar notes, quote, "The subsequent declarations of Aaron's people and Jeroboam's are almost identical." So let's now zoom in to these two characters. It's quite clear that there is some parallels between them. The author wants us to think of Aaron and Jeroboam as being the same in many ways. And this is even more evident when we look at their sons. Aaron has two sons, Nadab and Abihu. Jeroboam has two sons, Nadab and Abijah. The names of their sons are almost identical. The same scholar talking about this says the following: "Finally, both Aaron and Jeroboam had two sons who share similarities. First, their names parallel one another. Aaron's sons were Nadab and Abihu, and Jeroboam's sons were Nadab and Abijah. Second, both pairs of sons died for cultic infractions. Aaron's sons died because they offered strange fire, while Jeroboam's sons died because he set up the golden calves." End quote. All right, before we get into the next parallel, can I just really encourage you to hit that like button, leave me a comment, and subscribe. I will respond to all comments. And by doing all these things, we really do just make the YouTube algorithm happy, and hopefully more people find this video. If you are enjoying it, make sure you share it as well. All these things keep the channel alive. Now, what really keeps the channel alive are patrons. So if you can become a patron, please do so. The patrons keep the lights on. This channel would not exist if it were not for the patrons. All right, that's enough begging for money. Let's get back into these parallels. So we've talked about how Aaron and Jeroboam are the bad guys of our story. Well, who are the good guys of our story? Well, those are Moses and Josiah. And what we're going to see is that there's an equation being drawn between these people here. So let's talk about how Moses and Josiah are equated with each other. Let's first go to our scholar from before, who says the following: "Just as Moses then ordered the Levites to slay the transgressors who worshipped the calf, so a man of God prophesied that Josiah would slaughter the priests who sacrificed at the calf of Bethel." End quote. And then my favorite parallel is told to us by Friedman, who writes, "According to D, Moses burns the golden calf and grinds it thin as dust. According to the Deuteronomistic history, at the site of Jeroboam's golden calf, Josiah burns the high place and made it thin as dust." In the Hebrew Bible, the phrase "thin as dust" occurs only in Moses and Josiah contexts. That's really fascinating. All right, let's now come back to our bad guys again. So I'm going to bring down Aaron and Jeroboam again because there are more parallels here, which are really fascinating. Before we dive into them, can we just stop for a moment and really appreciate how odd it is that Aaron is portrayed as a bad guy? Why is it that Aaron is equated with Jeroboam? Aaron is the first priest of Israel. Aaron is the brother of Moses. Why is he being portrayed so negatively? This is noticed by William Propp in his commentary, where he says, "It is rather odd in any case that Aaron should appear as Jeroboam's surrogate. If Exodus 32 is a polemical allegory against Jeroboam, we might have expected an Ephraimite elder to be held responsible. Why does Aaron make the calf?" This is a really interesting question. And Propp goes on to give us a solution to it. He says, "The golden calf story was, so to speak, the first skirmish in an intergenerational battle over the priesthood that was fought within the tribe of Levi. The Bible nowhere explicitly recounts this war. Instead, scholars have plausibly inferred its existence between the lines of the text. So now we come to a really fascinating part of this video, and that is this intergenerational war over who are the true priests of Israel. And this brings us to the JEDP hypothesis, and the two priestly groups are represented by the E source and the P source. What we're now going to do for my patrons only is we're going to break this down and really analyze it. It's going to be really fascinating. We're going to go through Ezekiel 44, Numbers 18. We're going to talk about so much stuff, all of which will be exclusive to patrons. So please make sure you become a patron if you want this access to this fascinating content. And also just to support the channel as well. All these things make sure that this channel can continue. So please make sure you do become a patron. But if you're not in a position to become a patron, just make sure you hit that like button, leave me a comment, and subscribe. I'll say goodbye to everyone except my patrons for whom this video will continue.